There we go. We are recording. All right. Welcome, everyone, to another Biblical Christianity episode in our series of episodes on family matters. We are with Pastor Femi Osunnuyi of Lagos, Nigeria. Pastor Femi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mansa. It's my pleasure being with you.
Yeah, thanks. So could you tell us a bit about yourself, your family, the church that you're pastoring, where you're from, all that good stuff?
Well, as you said, I'm from Lagos, Nigeria. I was born and raised in Lagos. And, you know, I did my, I was a family of three kids. I'm in between two girls, so I'm the ham in the sandwich. Raised in a nominally Christian home, but eventually it's good to say that all members of the household are Christians today. In fact, my parents attend the church that we planted. So I trained as an engineer. All my 3 degrees from university to my PhD are all in engineering. But in the church that my parents were part of, was encouraged. It was like a house church. So it was really encouraged for young people to get into ministry. So I got into ministry very quickly, got reading. And so in between my studies, I became very, very interested in ministry. When I moved to the UK to pursue more studies, I got more introduced to the Reformed faith, and that just revolutionized my life. And that pushed me into the world of church planting, and I had a zeal for trying to see gospel-centered churches planted in Lagos. So we planted City Church in 2017, and the Lord has been faithful to us since then. I've got 2 boys, Tofumi and Timmy. Tofumi is 8, Timmy is 4, and my wife's name is Tosin. So they are the 3 T's, and I'm the 1 F.
That's good stuff. So we are in our discussion today. We are talking about moving from dependence to independence. Moving from dependence to independence. Interestingly enough, a pastor who has sons that are below the age of 12. And so this gives us a nice little portion to talk about why we reject standpoint epistemology, where people would say, because you are not in this position, you have no right to talk about certain issues. So maybe I'll pose that as a question. What gives you the right, Pastor Femi, to talk about transitioning children from dependence to independence?
Well, I should say I am not totally against standpoint epistemology. I do think there is something that when a 28-year-old single person in our church starts talking about marriage,
grandparenting.
Well, I was even saying marriage. You hear people that have read a couple of books. I am not saying that there isn't a theoretical understanding. There has to be the principled understanding from the Word of God, but many times the application of that knowledge is what we call wisdom, and so there is something to it.
Yes.
But you can always stretch it. Now, I would say the reason why I can speak on this is because I was once under the authority. I have moved from dependence to independence. So I'm not totally removed from it. And now I'm trying to put those things into practice. However, as well, yes, the Word of God does help. And we can study the Word of God and look at other people who have gone through these things. And so I hope that I have some wisdom to share on that.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. In fact, maybe I should also add my own little disclaimer here. What we are rejecting from the point of view of standpoint epistemology would be shutting people down for expressing concerns, thoughts, opinions, beliefs, etc. And we do believe in wisdom, which is why we come down to biblical parenting. We are doing this series of podcasts on biblical parenting because of the family conference that is coming up next week by our time currently, from the 24th to the 28th of August. Dr. Ted Tripp, the author of Shepherding a Child's Heart, is the main speaker. And we're just, in these Family Matters episodes, we're just opening up the discussion. Why is biblical parenting relevant? And thankfully, Pastor Femi is here joining us so that we can talk about transitioning children, or children, not children age, children, the offspring of parents, from dependence to independence. So could you just open it up for us, Pastor Femi? Why is this a relevant discussion?
Well, it's a relevant discussion because it's a human discussion, and it's a human discussion because it's a biblical discussion. God created human beings in his image, and the Bible actually tells us, it discloses God to us, but God in his relationship with his image bearers. And so it's a really important thing. And I would say, largely looking around, there is a lot of bad parenting done, and both within the Christian world and outside the Christian world, but largely because we aren't following the Bible. So let me try and lay out a bit of a biblical case for this. In Genesis 2:24, you have what I would say from the very outset, both the design for parenting and the design for marriage. You know, in a very summative. So it says that is why a man leaves his father and mother, the parenting design, and is united to his wife, the marriage design. What do you notice? Marriage is for unity. But with parenting, you have the people leaving.
Yeah.
You leave the father and mother. In fact, they leave the father and mother to then be united. They leave as parents to then go and then pursue marriage. So in other words, when you parent in a way that wants to keep the children there, you've already gone against the parenting design.
Yeah.
And so some of the proof we have of this is a woman gets pregnant, and what happens? Well, you say the baby is part of her. Well, until 9 months. What is labor? Labor is when the baby is saying, it's time to get out of this place. I need to be independent. All right, so the baby then comes, and then you start carrying the baby. Oh, it's so nice, you're so cute. And eventually the baby wants to get down. What's he saying? I need to start crawling. And then from crawling, I need to start walking. After a point, you say, well, this child is really, really noisy in our bedroom. He needs to move out. And so you move from the womb to the room, from the room to your own room. And then you have, secondary school or university, and then they start moving to their own education, if you like. And eventually, when we start having arguments in the house, when the 28 to 32-year-old is stuck in the house and the parents are saying, you have to come back at this point, why do you have arguments? Because that child should no longer be in the home. You see, the whole thing about parenting is about the child leaving. And so then we have to ask ourselves, what is then the task of parenting? It's one of preparation. Preparing the child to leave. And that is what biblical parenting is about. You talk about training up a child. We have to train the child. Why? You're training them to leave so that they can be united with someone else, not with you.
Yeah, it's brilliant that you've taken us all the way to Genesis, starting it at Genesis 2, right? At Genesis 2. So it's not something that we are trying to sneak into the Bible in latter stages. It only begins in the New Testament, set up by the Apostle Paul or something like that. It begins right at the beginning when God was speaking about the marriage union, even before children were a reality. Adam and Eve were the only two human beings on the planet, and yet right there, Genesis 2:24, we can see the connection between this transitioning from dependence to independence. And something else that you have brought up, which is really a good thing, is how you have basically laid out how parenting involves constant transitions to. And so it's not that parenting is preparing the child for independence and they are leaving the home, but it's different stages of independence over time.
That is a big problem. As you're already hitting at something that people want to wake up one day and then say, all right, go. It's like, we're not talking about dating. We're not talking about having relationships. Finish university, do all of these things, blah, blah. And the next thing is, what are you still doing in this house? Why is there no time? It's like, well, it doesn't work out that way.
One of the, I do a lot of work with young people, young adults, teenagers, and the like. And one of the things that the young adults tend to say quite often is, when we're teens, the messaging coming from the church and other people is, don't worry about relationships. Don't worry about relationships, work hard, do all these things. And then at some point, usually around university, there's this switch that happens where they're like, when are you getting married? It's like we view that not as a transition from different stages of dependence to independence, but
Yeah.
it's almost abrupt.
Exactly. And it's
Yeah.
a problem because you're not preparing. Remember, the task of parenting is preparation.
Yeah.
And so you're not preparing people wisely. And I would say, because I do a lot of marriage counseling,
Yeah.
what I've often said is that the reason why we have a lot of problems with marriage is people who are ill prepared to enter into the marriage. And so the switch mentality is part of that problem.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, let me just say 4 ways I think the Bible then tells us how we then prepare.
Yes, please.
Because the issue of preparation is an issue of education.
Yes.
And so there are really 4 spheres, if you like, that we can use to educate the children, right? As parents, technically, morally, socially, eternally. Yeah. Technically, morally, socially, eternally. In other words, technically, yes, they do have to go out and get trained and all of those things. But we do, 1, support that. But 2, we actually, at this point, can actually start helping our children. When you start seeing affinity for maybe science or for the arts, maybe it's for the arts, get them books to read, get them writing things about writing. You can technically prepare your child. Get them, if they're more into, computers, get them into programming. There is a job of the parent to technically train the child. Yeah. Morally, now this is a really important thing. We should not remember, at least we as Reformed Christians, that we are born in sin. In other words, your child does not come out thinking that they're not disposed towards doing right. Yeah. And so, like Gail Moody says, that if you send a real track thief to a university, when he comes out, what's he going to do? He's going to steal the whole real company, right? Because the education just made him smarter, but the same is there. And so we have to have moral discussions with our children. Even in this day and age where there's a lot of moral confusion, we shouldn't train them down. Yeah. We should talk about it. When they have issues, we shouldn't say, how could you think about that? No, actually, we should have the discussion. Then socially, a lot of people are seeing that in the workplace today, what is needed isn't just your technical intelligence, your intellectual intelligence, but your emotional and social intelligence. Well, as Christians, we're the ones that should have, we should be ahead on that, because again, as I said, the disclosure of God comes to us as human beings. And there's so much about human interaction in the Bible, in the church. And so we need, as parents, to be able to train our children up. A lot of parenting is about keeping the bad eggs away. We're trying to keep our children away from the bad people. Rather, we should try to prepare the children on how you deal with that kind of person and you deal with this kind of person. Yeah. But then most especially, you are to prepare them for eternity. This is what Paul says is the ultimate wisdom in parenting. In 2 Timothy 1 and 2 Timothy 3, it says he had known the scriptures that can make you wise unto salvation. But he then says in chapter 1 that salvation or that faith was first in Lois, his grandmother, and Eunice, his mother. Yeah. But now he knows is in him. Yeah. So we have to educate and train up our children, technically, morally, socially, but most importantly, eternally as well. Yeah, that is brilliant. What comes to mind when you're saying all this is how parenting is pretty much the process of refining. You have your base mineral, and then you're trying to refine it into higher levels of purity, efficiency, and effectiveness. And so when you see, as you said, with the technical aspect, you see that the child has a certain interest, a leaning towards the technical arts, the visual arts, or the written word, or anything like that. You cultivate that, you refine that in the child, while providing the guidance in terms of moral aspects, relational aspects, and eternal aspects. But this, what you're saying goes against the prevalent culture right now that says let children breathe, right? The Eastern
The East Asian style of parenting is that overbearing, study, 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 whereas the Western style parenting is, let them express them, let them have the freedom to be themselves. What would you say we can see or think about that in terms of the union between these two, the balance? How do we
I
encourage
like the way
parents
you,
to refine?
I like the way you're putting it in balance in terms of in the sense that those from the East, those from the West, and maybe sometimes you compare us and the East.
Yeah.
There is something there. The problem is always that the something is always taken to the ultimate level.
Yeah.
So I think I like to make a difference that there's probably three types, and Paul gives us this when we read in Colossians chapter 3 about parenting.
Yeah.
And also Ephesians chapter 6. There is embittered parenting, there is enabling parenting.
Yeah.
Right? Embittered parenting is parenting that is designed where you just want the children to submit to you, obey before complaining, like we used to say in Nigeria. You just want them to, it's an abuse of authority.
Yeah.
Right? It's all about obedience and submission. When you punish without explanation.
Yeah.
You regularly lose your temper on them. So that's on the one hand, it's about the family. It's about how we're seeing in the outside that these children are well behaved. That's on the one hand. Paul says that will lead to embittered. Parents, do not embitter your children.
Yeah.
Now, however, some then go in the other direction. If embittered parenting is about getting children to submit to you, then enabling parenting is about getting the children to like you.
Yeah.
And you just want them to like you. And so what happens is that you go ignore authority.
Yeah.
And you're all about approval and affirmation.
Yeah.
You explain.
You want to be their best friend. Yeah.
You want to be the best friend. So if the embittered parenting is punishing without explanation, enabling parenting is explanation without punishment when they've gone wrong, right? So the children learn to fear and resist authority in future. Yeah. And you cannot live a life without authority. So what is the biblical alternative? You see that in Hebrews chapter 12. Discipline parenting. That is parenting that is trying to disciple. To disciple, you cannot just try to get the children to be under your authority, because they will not eventually be under your authority, or they shouldn't always be under your authority. Yeah. And so this is wisdom, this is skillful parenting. There are transitions. So at some point in the child's life, it's do what daddy says, do what daddy says. Yeah. At some other point, you start to, do what daddy says because of this. And so you kind of keep moving the slider. Yeah. And by the time you get into mid-teenage, you should be more, talking, explaining, and then maybe sometimes outsourcing where you're not, particularly single to answer the question. So that's what I would say.
That's great. Well, to sum it up, as we draw towards a close, what I am getting from all that you have said is the training from dependence towards independence is not a one-off thing that you sort of begin when they're 15 because they'll be leaving when they're 18. It is a continuous training and discipline so that as they gain more and more independence, they're doing it with responsibility and with a with responsibility. How can you frame that for us?
I'll sum it up saying eventually they move from dependence to independence, but independence is not isolation. And so this is where, as a child, as a parent, what you then move towards is where God ultimately wanted you to become, to be a counselor, to be somebody who advises. So even when your child is now, like I believe you're married now,
yes,
right? You can always try and lean on your parents and just say, hey, I'm thinking about this, and they're not trying to control you. And so why that is important is because though God always disciples us in communities, He is discipling us individually. You don't lose your individuality in community, at least the way God sees it, you actually gain it. And then that person becomes a wise individual who is wise for eternity. And because they are wise for eternity, they can be useful people in their families, in their society, and what have you. And so that's what parenting is such an important thing, is that it makes us good people for our societies.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is exceptional. Um, Probably just I know we said in closing, but I'm just thinking my mind is racing back and forth with the information that you have given. Um, the way I see it, it's the glory of God is now paramount in parenting because you are nurturing the child uh, as a gift that God has given you. Let me make a connection with the parable of the talents. It's like the talents have been given, and at some point, the talents have to produce something. There's an end product, and so the parenting is also be connected to the talents in that we're supposed to nurture for God's glory. Because at the end of the day, we know that God is expecting something of what we have been given, and the multiplication should be not just giving him back the one that he has given us, but it should
Super.
be a compounded effect. Would that be a good way of phrasing it?
Super. I often tell people in our church who are investment bankers, I say God is the ultimate investment banker.
Yeah.
You see that all the scriptures. It starts with two, but at the end of it, it's meant to have a multitude.
Yeah.
Jesus is the corn of wheat falling to the ground that then produces much. And God creates this world that says, make the best of it. So your parenting is exactly that.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Pastor Femi. You have opened it up. Yeah, I was already looking forward to the conference just to hear more about this thing that is biblical parenting. But now I'm even more hyped up.
That's praying for the conference. That would be a wonderful thing. Ted Tripp is a great speaker. I've heard him speak live on this before, and also have obviously his book. So I'm praying, and I'm sure it would be a good time.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Before we leave, how can we be praying for you, your family, your church? If we have people who want to get in touch, know about your ministry, how can that be done?
Yeah, if they want to know, I think you can follow myself or our church on Instagram, Twitter. I think we're at City Church Lagos is the church, at City Church Lagos, and I am at Femi on Zion on Twitter, at Femi on Zion, all one word. And I'm not sure what my Instagram, but it's not even interesting. So follow the church at City Church Lagos on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. But please be praying for us. It's been a leadership challenge, as for me and many other pastors who you would know, just in this time of global pandemic, and as well, just going through the normal things of ministry, dealing with difficulties in our church and things like that. But just pray that the Lord keeps us faithful in this city, and that God continues to grow his work here.
Yeah, we shall. Thank you very much, Pastor Femi. It has been a pleasure. We hope we will have you again next time. We'll arrange, whether or not you want to, we will keep knocking till you say yes.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. God bless you too. Okay, this has been Biblical Christianity in our series Family Matters with Pastor Femi Osunnuyi of the Church Lagos. Once again, we are preparing ourselves for the family conference that is happening from the 24th to the 28th of August. The registration is on right now. It is a free virtual conference, and so you can view it wherever you are. And just check the links wherever you are seeing this description, wherever, and register for the conference. It will be exceptional. We've got Dr. Ted Tripp, who's leading it, his wife Margie Tripp. We have Pastor Mbewe, Bokam, Pastor Ron Kalifungwa, and a host of other phenomenal speakers. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us, everybody. We shall see you next time in Biblical Christianity.
My name is Ronald Kalifungwa, and I am the pastor of Kabwata Baptist Church. I wish to invite you to the 31st edition of the Zambia Reformed Family Conference, which will run from the 24th to the 28th of August. The theme of the conference is biblical parenting, a very important subject for our time. And to handle this theme, we have invited a knowledgeable and experienced speaker, in the person of Dr. Ted Tripp. He will be joined by a galaxy of local speakers from Zambia who will also be handling parenting-related themes. A special feature in this conference is that the ladies will have 2 sessions addressed by Mrs. Margie Tripp on the subject, Loving God in Life's Disappointments. Make a point of registering, and you can do that on the Lusaka Baptist Church website as well as the Kabwata Baptist Church website. It's a virtual conference, so you can join us from anywhere in Zambia and indeed around the world. We look forward to hearing from you and enjoying the feast that is being made ready for us. Amen.